This baby right here is a badass computer from the 90s. This is an Silicon Graphics or SGI Octane made back in the day when your computer didn't have to automatically update, when it was the 90s and technology was so cool and technology was going to change everything. And if you had money, you could buy some truly powerful computers like this Silicon Graphics Octane that cost about as much as a car. See, if you had money in the 90s and you wanted power, you didn't just run out to your Micro Center and buy some gaming rig or some overpriced Facebook machine. No, you didn't buy that and then use that horrible keyboard to complain about how in Python the terms master and slave should be changed. Nah, you got yourself a Silicon Graphics Octane, and this thing cost about as much as a car did back in the 90s. And it was really, really powerful. And then it depreciated faster than any car did. Like this BMW I bought, yeah. That thing cost less than... this thing cost less than that car did. The car was 40 grand, it depreciated to 23 grand. This thing, on the other hand, cost about as much as a car did. Maybe even as much as a house did. Like a smaller house. And this thing depreciated to cost, get this, $80 at the local recycler. This is the second one I've owned, by the way. The first one didn't even work. It had a broken front plane, which meant the power supply fan wouldn't spin, which meant it would cook itself. But this, oh, this baby, I'm going to fire this bad boy up. This baby from the 90s works just fine. And it's badass, I tell you, when it works. How many other computers have startup chimes nowadays? Exactly. Even the Macs don't have startup chimes. And this bad boy has a nice piano startup chime. That's how you know you're dealing with a real computer. You're not dealing with some piece of crap Facebook machine or Walmart special discount. You're dealing with a real computer right here. Now let's hit the escape key and I'm going to show you this cool feature. As it did all the power on tests and it passed fine. The power lights burn out because it's an incandescent bulb actually, but this thing works just fine. So here's a cool feature about this computer already, and I haven't even gotten into the OS yet. So by now, if you own a modern computer made in this day and age, it probably comes with a fancy schmancy BIOS where, oh, you can click around stuff and you can get your system info, and you can click this and that, and you can do all this cool stuff in your new UEFI BIOS. You can do all that cool stuff in your UEFI BIOS and change all the settings and click this and that. But it's just your typical old BIOS with the keyboard and mouse added instead of just a keyboard. And even like some computers, they don't even have this. They'll just have the plain old text BIOS. But this is a computer from the 90s, and here you have a GUI BIOS. You can click stuff here, install some software. Well, you sadly have to run the formatter first from this command line, but you can do that. Run diagnostics, you click there, it runs it. Recover system. You click there and it lets you boot a recovery off something. And you hit the command monitor and you get some commands. So first we're going to look over the specs. This has 512 megs of RAM, a 300 MHz MIPS R12000 CPU. If that sounds familiar, that's because other MIPS CPUs were used in the PS1, the PS2, the N64, and the PSP. And of course a lot of routers and printers too. Here are the commands for HINV. And look, this is a BIOS where you can just click stuff. And this is a computer from the 90s. This is a computer from 1996 originally. I think 96 or 97. And yet, this computer, despite all this, has a BIOS you can click, and there were SGIs with BIOSes like this even before. Well, this isn't really a BIOS, it's actually something called ARCs, ARCS is the name of the boot firmware the system uses, and it's similar to the boot firmware used in like some of the alphas, which Windows NT got its weird hard disk naming from. So as you can see, this is booting IRIX 6.5.30, which was the last version ever released for Silicon Graphics hardware. And as you can see, this boots pretty quick actually. 300 megahertz of power. This is the fastest 300 megahertz system you'll see. You look around this system and you see a nice design, like a nice green case. You see that this was a system that was commonly butchered by case modders for a good reason. These things looked really nice. Let's pull the front panel off and pull the front panel off, and it's taken a little while to come off. Oh, I knocked over my plush, dang it. Okay, this is the front of the system. As you can see, there's 3 hard drive bays, or at least 2 of them that are usable. Third one might not be able to take a hard drive. And you've got a little fan here for the board that connects the motherboard, which is on this side, to the video card, which is on this side, to the PCI cage and SCSI, which is, the PCI cage is optional and the system doesn't have it. Here we can see our burnt out incandescent bulbs. And right here is a little diagnostic LED pattern. And basically, all the lights should light up in at least this position. They might light up a little differently if the video card's on a different connector, but it basically shows what the system sees connected. And if some of these lights don't light up, you've got problems, which you will probably have because this is old Silicon Graphics hardware. And sadly, this hardware does seem to have aged like milk at times, which is a shame because in the 90s, this was the fastest you could get, or up there with the fastest at least. Alright, this is the back of the system. As we can see, this was an Octane made in Switzerland. Copyright 1997. This Octane's in better shape than the other one, and as you can see, this was a high-end machine. It has RCA in and out. It has microphone in and headphone out, digital audio in and out, SCSI, parallel, Ethernet, PS2, keyboard and mouse, serial, and then we've got this extra huge power supply fan that blows out a lot of air, and it feels quite warm if you hold your hand up to it. Now this thing puts out a lot of heat, and so if this fan doesn't spin, because most likely the front plane of the system's toasted, the system will effectively not work, because it'll boot up still, but it'll cook itself and power off. So if you have a Silicon Graphics Octane with a power supply fan that's not spinning, your front plane's bad. Don't waste your money replacing the power supply, because that won't fix the issue. So this is the video connector, 13W3, but I did the smash all the pins out trick, because you sometimes have to do this if you have a Silicon Graphics machine, because they did their 13W3 pin out a little differently. There were actually multiple pin outs for 13W3, but the only 3 consistent pins were those 3 big ones. And if you knock out all the pins, it's like using BNC video, which is fine because I have a Sun monitor that can work with this. Nice machine front and back. I take the boards out to show you, but the problem is if you take the boards out of these machines too many times, you'll end up with issues, especially because the connectors on these machines really, they're these weird compression connectors where if you, basically how they work is, imagine like an LGA socket on a computer where you've got the flat pins, where it's like the CPU's flat and then there's pins on the other end, but like imagine both of them are flat. That's a compression connector and it sucks. So if you have an SGI Octane and you don't need to take it apart, don't take it apart just to show your friends for a parlor trick, because that's how somebody I know killed one of their Octanes. So now we've logged into this badass computer, and now we can show you all this cool stuff on here. Now this computer You know how it is when you spend, like, money on an expensive computer and it's slow as balls because Windows 10 happened? And because the programming mentality nowadays is just a few more cycles here and there, the computer can handle it, just a few more cycles, the computer can handle it, and then the next guy in the chain is like, just a few more cycles here, the computer can handle it, and then the next guy in the chain is like, just a few more cycles here, the computer can handle it, and then next thing you know, you end up with a bloated mess. Well, this ain't like that. This is fast. Here's some shit I downloaded and me trying to learn coding. I've actually installed the compilers. Let's go to, what's it called? Process Manager or System Manager. Actually, let's go to Utilities, Start New Console. HINV, look at all the stuff here. Check out, like, the specs of this computer. This is a full-on Unix system, mind you, so you can do all those fancy commands. Let's go to, find. As you can tell, there's sound effects here, but one of the demos turned the sound quality down to, it turned the sound quality down. So we have to change the sound quality back up. This is the kind of fun stuff you end up with on IRIX, mind you. And you have to try to remember, which one did the sound? Is it this? Oh, and that's not it. Let's open up the audio control panel, and as you can see, it's changed itself to 8 kilohertz. We can't have that. So let's go to demos, and you get a bunch of cool stuff. You get some 3D stuff. Yeah. You get some games. You get some demos. Oh, look, here's a Mandelbrot demo. That's okay. You get some cheesy CGI games like this. Look how cheesy this is. Look how cheesy this is. Look at these cheesy OpenGL demos that really aren't fun at all. Yeah, this isn't fun at all. I'm gonna go play MW3 on my Xbox instead. But if you want a game that's actually fun, here you get Doom. And hold on, I actually gotta go to the audio control panel again. It's actually audio panel, not that. We gotta go back to this, and we gotta go to sample rate and change it to 48. IRIX fun. And look, I can play Doom on my SGI. Because, you know, when you're spending all this money on a computer, you gotta treat yourself with some games like Doom. I mean, why play stuff like Solitaire, like on Windows 95? Because that's what peasants have. You got an SGI, you're a big boy. You're gonna go play some Doom, like a true gamer. You got Doom on here, and you can play that. Yeah, I'm playing Doom. That's amazing. But the thing with Silicon Graphics hardware is you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of software and games for it outside of, like, 3D software or, like, video editing software. You're not going to find a lot of software that was released or even uploaded to the internet. There's probably a lot of undumped software for this. Same goes with HPUX, same goes with True64, same goes with AIX, same goes with Solaris. But at least with Silicon Graphics, a lot of people like these, so a lot of software for IRIX has been dumped on the internet. So you can find stuff like Adobe Photoshop for IRIX. You can find stuff like Maya for IRIX. You can find stuff like Flame for IRIX. You can find stuff like Soft Image 3D for IRIX. You can find a lot of that, and I don't have this installed, unfortunately. But what every SGI does have installed is the screensavers. And look, I gotta go back to control panels, and I gotta go back to audio panel. I gotta change it to, again, to 48 kilohertz. And as you can see, you get these sick-ass screensavers with your Silicon Graphics workstation. You get CGI Sharks from the 90s screensaver. You get, hippie, trippy shit screensaver. That's a good screensaver. You get the classic Electro Paint, because it's an SGI and you better have that screensaver. Now, why did I move the mouse? You gotta see the screensaver in all its trippy psychedelic glory. This is a great screensaver right here. I mean, you know, when your Windows, you got that curvy screensaver. You got that like Mystify Your Mind screensaver. You got 3D Maze. No. This blows it out of the water with badass screensavers right here. I mean, your Windows PC has the flying Windows logo, while this has the SGI cubes falling. And of course, you get the other standard Unix screensavers that every Unix system back in the day had. Like this one, the Life screensaver. The Game of Life. Yeah, you get that screensaver on your SGI, but the only difference is it's made up of SGI cubes instead of the other. You gotta love old SGI screensavers. Those are good. And you get this random Octahera screensaver with these floaty cubes that are colored. Of course, you get Quicks. That's a good screensaver, but my favorite non-GL screensaver which lets you lock the screen is this. This is a great screensaver by far. And of course, you get the typical X logo screensaver, but with cubes. You get Swarm, and you get all the other Unix screensavers here, because why not? And you can also even open up CDE if you want, but you won't get these cool screensavers. And you get to choose your window colors. Well, I'm not so much window colors, but yeah, you actually can. You can choose a lot of window colors. You can customize your display settings. You can choose your background. And you get some cool ones. I think the best one is Twilight. That's a really good screensaver, but I think that's video hardware accelerated. But that looks really sick and aesthetic. You get CPU Eater. That one makes you feel like you're in Jurassic Park and shit. This sick ass SGI cube just twirling in the background, rendered in real time over your desktop, eating up your CPU cycles. Hell yeah. You don't see that on your Windows 95 computer. No. And then you get the typical generic backgrounds. Here's a bunch of SGI logo screensavers that came later. And then there's just a plain SGI logo that's not spinning. And let's just go with Twilight, because why not? Or actually, I'll just go back with Scatter. That's a good screen. That's a good background. The classic default. And of course, you get a few other things. You get Mozilla 1.7. You get OpenOffice. You get NEdit, which is a basic text editor written in Modif. And it's also available on Linux and stuff. Here's OpenOffice. This was the good old version before Sun got bought by Oracle, and Oracle tried to kill it, leading to LibreOffice. And there's a bunch of other ports of old Unix programs. For example, let's go to NacoWare. You get all these things that were just ported over to IRIX over a period of time. all these things that were just ported to IRIX by the old Neko-chan website, which is now gone. But they had a lot of stuff. They had Python, they had Vim, they had Firefox, which is slow as balls on here for obvious reasons, you know. It's not designed for older computers because, you know what they say, just a few more cycles, it won't hurt. I mean, modern computers can handle it nowadays. And now look, Firefox is bloated, lol. And, yeah. So yeah, this is a nice vintage Unix system made before computers completely went to shit. I mean, you see this logo, Silicon Graphics? Yeah, that's how you know this was a good machine. That's how you know this was a good machine, because it has that Silicon Graphics logo. So let's shut this thing down now. And while I shut this down, even though this machine was badass, unique, and ahead of its time, and by far the most polished of the Unix systems, it also had a major flaw. Besides the system being proprietary, it didn't have many games. Which means, you know, you gotta port games to it. And what do you think kids these days and computers care about? Games. They want games to play. So, you're going to see more interest in a $2 Pentium 2 from a thrift store like I got the other day than you would in this unique computer that has a fast MIPS processor in it, that has a lot of cool features in it. And I hit power down. So, you actually didn't get to hear the shut-off chime, because this computer actually has a power-off chime. But still, this is a very unique, interesting machine. But at the same time, it doesn't have many games for it at all. And it doesn't have too much software, even though the software situation for this machine is by far better than some of the other Unix machines out there, like True64 or AIX or even worse, HPUX. So the software situation could be worse, but you're not going to find a lot of cool games for this. And if you get one of these systems, you're probably getting it because either you want to flex it on the internet, you want to write software for it, or you've got some old software that you want to use that's literally not on anything else because these computers were proprietary. So all in all, here's a nice overview of a very interesting machine. Thanks for watching, gamers, and subscribe for more.